У нас большая честь представить нашего американского партнера, который, к счастью для нас, согласился рассказать о том же, как психическое здоровье повлияло на молодежь и как YMCA США смогли адаптировать программы лагерей в связи с этим. Джоэл, большое спасибо за твой опыт заранее. Тебе слово.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for having me, and it's an honor to be with you all today. And please let me know. I asked Olga to let me know if I'm going too fast, and I tend to get very excited when I talk about the camp and what we do here, and so I'll try not to talk too fast. But again, I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you all today. And my name is Joel Sieplinga. I'm the CEO at Camp Tecumseh YMCA. I'm gonna see if I can share my screen here. There we go. How about right there? Excellent. Can you guys all see that? So again, my name is Joel Sieplinga at Camp Tecumseh. It's in Indiana, in the U.S., kind of right in the middle of the country. And I first want to say I think it's just an amazing thing to be part of the YMCA globally. I've never met any of you, but yet we share something in common through the Y, and I think that's just an amazing thing. I grew up with the YMCA. My dad has worked for the Y his entire career, and I grew up at a YMCA here in the U.S. And so I love that we already have that connection, even though we've never met. That we share that in common. My hope today is to share with you, first of all, a little bit about just who we are at Camp Tecumseh, to kind of give you an idea of what we do, and then to share with you some of a little bit of the history of how we've looked at mental health at camp and through our Y, and then especially recently what that has looked like in this last year or year and a half due to COVID, because it's something that changed what we do and how we think about things, and how we can help and serve all the kids that we have. So let me see if I can advance this. So Camp Tecumseh, we have we're on about 700 acres here in Indiana. I'll show you a picture in just a little bit. We're on a river, we've got hills and that sort of thing, but it's not necessarily, we're not a mountainous area, but a lot of woods and hills. We have a small river or a small lake. This is our river that we're on. This was taken this summer. So, a beautiful site that we have here. But we do kind of two different seasons here at Camp Tecumseh. So we have, during the summer, we have our overnight and day camps. And this past summer, we served about 6,000 campers during the course of the summer. Right about 750 campers every week. In order to make that happen, we had about 300 staff working with us. And I understand it's a little bit different for us versus maybe for some of you. The majority of our 300 staff are paid staff. Some of them are adults, but a lot of them are in kind of that college age range. And so we have a lot of 18 to 25-year-olds who work for us during the summer. Many of them work the entire summer long, so 10 weeks in a row. Some of them just work a week or two here or there. And so there's some good and bad to both of those. There's some challenges with both of those, and I'll get into that. And then during the rest of the year, during the non-summer months, we work with a lot of schools in Indiana and in the Midwest to do outdoor education. And then we also do groups and conferences. So school groups or church groups or college groups can come in to stay at camp for a couple of days, and whether it's to meet or whether it's to do activities outdoors or whatever it might be. And we typically serve about 30,000 people during the rest of the year. And so in order to make that happen, we have about 100 staff and fewer staff for that, because we're not in all of the cabins were more facilitating around those groups. So again, in the course of the year, we see 36,000 people come to camp, and it's a wonderful place to be, but it presents some challenges, both normally and especially in the last year and a half of what that has looked like. And so to talk a little bit about specifically the mental health side of things, I've worked here at Camp Tecumseh for right about 15 years. And some of you maybe have worked for your YMCAs or been involved working with kids and youth for a long time. And so maybe like me, your mindset has changed over the years. And so I'll share, for me, I used to think, and kind of my thought is, anytime a staff member would say that they were having challenges or struggles, or that the job was hard or something like that, I kind of had that mindset of tough it out. Like, you can do it, just it's hard, but do it. And that's just how it is. And that's how I used to think. We'll get into how I think now more, but I used to think kind of that tough it out, or we've always done it this way. You know, our camp has been around for almost 100 years. And so if people 50 years ago could do this, why can't you do this now? And then, you know, when I was a counselor 15, 16 years ago, I didn't have a problem with that. And so why are you having a problem with that? And then the last one, and what, you know, I'm sure you guys can relate to, of anytime you tell somebody that you work with kids or you work with the Y, they might say, oh, that sounds like such a fun job. And it's so great. That job must be so much fun. And it is fun, absolutely. But as we'll talk about in a little bit, it's also really difficult at times. And so it can't just be fun. And so that was kind of my mindset for staff, again, that 18 to 25-year-old staff. And then for campers, again, we've seen a lot more campers talk about their mental health challenges. And one of the thoughts I think that sometimes comes to our mind is, you know, you're a kid. How bad could your problems really be, right? I mean, you're a kid. You know, if we make everything fun enough, it'll be fine. Everything will go away. We just have to make them laugh or something like that, or you know, do an activity to keep them busy, and then everything, all the bad stuff will go away. Or we think, you know, these kids, we serve a lot of kids who have from the outside what looks like a really good home life, and so if they are having troubles, clearly they can get help back at home. There's somebody there who can help them. We don't have to worry about that here at camp. And again, I say all of that because that's maybe whether we said it out loud or whether we just thought that. That's kind of where we thought in the past that, or where my mind was in the past of, you know, again, tough it out. It's going to be okay. And it wasn't really at the top of anybody's mind. But as you can imagine, in the last, you know, 5 or so years, it has become more important for us to think about that. And you know, as you look at the statistics of mental health across the United States, and I would guess it's similar in other countries, of the number of kids who battle mental health challenges, who are, you know, clinically depressed or have anxiety or whatever it is, it's a large number. And so if I look at, we have 6,000 kids during the summer, we're going to have a lot of kids who have these challenges. And so we need to address it. We can't just think it's going to go away if we have more fun. It's not. So there's just a picture of some of the activities that we do here at camp on our lake. So in the last couple of years, we started to recognize what were some of those challenges and issues that our campers and our staff were having. And so for our staff specifically, we're having a lot of them say that they had to quit partway through the summer. Again, most of the time our counselors are here for 10 weeks, and we had counselors who came to us after the first 3 weeks and said, I can't do this anymore. I need to go home. I need to quit. And that's a tough thing for us to see. It's tough to be able to fill that spot because we're planning on them. We need them to help us run camp. But also it's tough to see that just on a personal level of somebody that you care about that's saying, I can't do this anymore. I need to leave. And so we are seeing, you know, 3 or 4 or 5 people every summer who just came to us partway through and said, I need to be done. I need to leave. You know, what added on to that sometimes is we think, when we're at camp, everything is wonderful and happy, but there's a world outside of our programs, right? And whether it's you guys do an overnight camp or just if you're doing something at your Y or with kids, they still have a life outside of camp, right? They have a life outside of the YMCA. And so we had counselors who got a phone call that their grandfather had passed away or that somebody in their family was sick. And so just that of getting that news and then having to turn around and try to help kids that you were working with, it's a tough thing to do because in the back of your mind, you're still thinking about your family, or you're still thinking about your friends who are having a rough time. And then we'd have, as a result of that and other things, just counselors and staff ask for time off for personal reasons. They would say, I just need time to rest, or, I've got to figure things out for school. Again, most of our counselors are in college. And so as soon as they leave camp, they have to go back to school. And so that's in their mind of they need to figure out where they're going to live next year, or what's going on with their boyfriend or their girlfriend or whatever it might be. And so they asked for time off for that. We had a number of staff over the last couple of years who, because of all of these things that just kept adding up, they ended up having a panic attack while they were at camp. They didn't know what to do with all of these emotions and the mental health that they were struggling with. And they broke down right there. And then with that, there's some secondary trauma is what we like to call it. And that's for those staff who they're helping kids. And we're going to go into what some of our kids were going through, but they're helping kids and they have a kid come to them and share something that is really painful in their life. And the counselors do a great job of talking them through that and helping them. But if you're like me, after you talk to somebody about that, and after that's done, all of a sudden on you feel like, oh, that was a lot. What do I do with that? Like, I need time to process what I just helped somebody else process. And so that's what we kind of call that secondary trauma. And so these were all the things, and this was all happening before COVID, before the stresses of COVID, just in the last several years. And then for our campers, we're getting just an increase of reports of campers who were talking about anxiety and depression. Some of them were on medications for these mental health conditions. And again, it's something that 10 or 15 or 20 years ago, we didn't have any of that. And now all of a sudden we're having kids who they have real diagnosed conditions that we need to help them with, or that they have challenges with. With that as well, we hear of reports of abuse happening at home, campers sharing things that happen at their house, of whether it's a family member or a friend who's not treating them well, who's abusing them in some way. And the good thing is they feel safe with us to be able to tell us that, of, hey, this happened to me, and either I need help right now, or I need help just processing what happened to me. And then, stressors of school and relationships. These are campers, some of whom are getting ready to go into high school. And, so that for us, that's grade 9. And thinking about there's going to be a lot more that I have to do. And I feel like I'm behind on everything, or I'm not as smart as my friends on this or on that. Or, for us getting into university, of thinking through, that's a stress that already our 15-year-olds were thinking about getting into university, and what is that going to look like? And, what do I need to do to make sure I get a good college and then get a good job and all of that. And then relationships, right? They've got, whether it's family relationships or romantic relationships or whatever it might be, they've got all of these things that they're thinking about and build up that stress level. And again, in the past years, we've seen more and more of that coming out. And so we had to figure out, what are we going to do about that? We can't just close our eyes and say, la, 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 it's going to go away. We need to do something. We need to figure out, what do our kids need and what do our counselors need while they're here. Oops, I went the wrong way. And then last year, what did that look like for us and for a lot of people? So I will share in 2020, we didn't run any programs. We decided we were not able to run camp. And so we didn't have overnight camp. We didn't have any of these groups and conferences. We basically shut down for most of the year. But we realized, we could do it safely in 2021 and we could bring kids back. There are a lot of changes we had to make. And I think Megan tomorrow is going to talk more about the changes that they made at their camp. So we made a lot of similar changes that they did. But there were some changes in the kids and in the counselors that some of that we were expecting and some of that we were very surprised about. And we had to figure out how to deal with it. One of the big things is there's a lot of social anxiety for our kids and for our counselors. A lot of our kids and counselors, they had not been around people for a year, right? They had been doing school from home, or they had been kind of isolated and quarantined for a year, and to go from nothing to surrounded by 700 people, that's a lot. And it's a lot to just process. If you can think of, if the first time you're out seeing other people, you're in a big crowd of other kids and counselors, that can be overwhelming. And then there's that, really 18 months of uncertainty. I'm not sure how it was for you all in Europe. For us, it feels like there's been a lot of, we think something one day and then it completely changes the next day. We think, oh, things are getting better, and then they get worse. And okay, we need to wear masks, and then we don't need to wear masks, and then we can get with groups, and then we can't get with groups, and we're going to be in school, and no, we're not going to be in school. And so it's just a lot of uncertainty, and that's difficult for anybody to, we like to know what's going on. I know I do. I like to be able to have a schedule and know, okay, tomorrow I know what it's going to look like. And for 18 months, none of us had that. We didn't know what tomorrow was going to bring in so many different ways. And so that was a huge stressor that we saw from kids, and they had difficulty making decisions. That was one of the things that we didn't really think about is our counselors, our 18 to 25-year-olds, they haven't been able to make decisions for a year and a half. And so when we asked them to create a schedule, that was overwhelming. It's like, I haven't had to make a schedule for a long time. And so when you ask your staff or your volunteers to help you get organize something or make a decision on this or that, of realizing they haven't had to do that for a long time. Again, if they're just cooped up inside in their house or just doing everything over Zoom like this, they haven't had to make those decisions. And asking them to do that added some challenge. So we also saw, as I talked about, we've had campers in the past share with us instances of abuse that was happening at home. We saw a huge increase in that this summer. And so as you look at working with kids in this next year, you just need to be ready for that. There are going to be more times that you have kids talk about a really bad home life. For us in the past, kids didn't have to spend too much time at home. They would go to school and hopefully that's a safe place, or they have somebody safe to talk to at school or at church or wherever it might be. And when you're just at home for that length of time, some kids have a great home life and it's a wonderful thing, and they grew closer to their family. But for other people, that's a really tough thing. Maybe they don't have a good relationship with their parents or with their grandparents or with their brothers or sisters. And so having to stay in the same house with them for 18 months, that can cause a lot of issues. And the adults that they're staying with have also had a lot of stressors. And so they're more anxious or stressed out because maybe they lost a job, or they're uncertain about it, whether they have the money to pay their bills or whatever it might be. And so there's that increase in abuse that's potentially happening at home. And then we had, for several people, a real fear of contracting the virus. Again, when we have 750 people on site, that's more people than they've been around for a long time. And so they're not sure if they're safe there physically and with their health. And so they have a fear of contracting contracting the coronavirus. And so talking to them about that and making sure that they know what the protocols are and what we're going to do to keep them safe. We sent out videos to families before they arrived at camp to say, this is what what to expect, and this is what you're going to have to do, and when you're going to have to wear a mask. We had to be really open and transparent with people. And then, again, I'm not sure how it is for you, but here in the States, it's like if you see or hear anybody cough, you automatically think they must have the COVID. Right? You can't just have a regular cold anymore. And so if these staff or these campers see anybody sneeze or cough, or they're automatically thinking, oh no, they have COVID. What am I going to do, or am I safe? So there's that side of it. And then one of the other increases that we definitely saw was for our staff, they just didn't have a lot of experience working with kids. Normally we get a lot of staff who come back year after year, and so they're used to working with kids. They know what it's like. We had less of that this year because we didn't have an entire summer, and so we had a lot of staff who they just weren't sure how to handle kids in general. How do you talk to a kid who's just sad? I haven't had to do that in a year and a half. So how do I get down on their level so that it's not just an adult talking to a kid, and how do I interact with them in a way that they're not scared to talk to me, and they understand what I'm saying, even in the language that they use, and using words that the kids can understand. Our staff just weren't used to that. And so these are all kind of the things that we had some challenges and some issues before, and then COVID hit, and in 2021, those just became more and more prevalent, and it became more of a challenge for all of these folks to figure out, and for us as a camp to figure out what to do. And so that's what that looked like. I'm going to pause a second because I realize I've just been talking a lot. I've got more about, okay, how do we address that? But want to open it up if there's any clarification or any questions that you have about kind of what we've seen both over the last 5 or so years, as well as specifically last year. If you do have questions throughout all this, I guess I'm going to ask you to, if you want to type them and send them to Olga. Would that be all right, Olga? Because I can see you on my screen right now. If there are people who have questions, they can send you a message, and you can flag me down and tell me that somebody has a question. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, sure. You can. People can write to me or to the common chat. Yeah, sure.
Perfect. Thank you. So that's what 2021 looked like. So back in 2018 and 2019, as we were seeing some of these mental health challenges that our campers and that our staff were going through, we looked at a couple of different ways to address it. And again, we said we couldn't just keep saying, tough it out, you're going to be okay. We had to do something about it. And so we tried things like good YMCA people. We tried a lot of different things. And honestly, we tried to do a lot of that stuff just by ourselves. And, we get really good at the YMCA of, we'll go online and look for something or read a book and say, all right, now I can teach this, or now I'm the expert in this. And so that's what we did a lot of. One of the first things that we introduced was an inclusion specialist. We brought in a staff specifically to work with kids who had some different challenges. At first, that was really focused on kids who had medical diagnoses of attention deficit disorder or autism, or something along those lines, and just to help them figure out how to navigate a day and a week at camp. Then it kind of shifted, and that person helped also with kids who were homesick, who really wanted to go home and didn't want to stay at camp anymore. And especially our younger kids, we start sometimes with 5 to 8-year-olds are some of our youngest kids. And after, when they get dropped off at camp, they want their mom pretty quick after that. And so these inclusion specialists would help with that, or just with kids who had behavior issues. Now, we've seen a lot of great things come from that inclusion specialist, and we still have folks on that, and I'll talk about that more in a little bit, but it didn't solve, or didn't really address most of the mental health concerns that counselors and that the kids had. It helped in some ways, but not in this. Then one year we tried what we called a staff connection person. And that person's job was just to say, hey, how do we kind of encourage the staff who are here? Because it's a long summer and they're tired and they're worn out. And so we need somebody whose their sole job is just to say, you know, how to encourage the folks. And that turned out all right. But the focus was a little bit too much on what activities can we do, and can we, you know, let's give them snacks, and because of course 18 to 25-year-olds, they like food, and so let's give them you know, food or snacks or whatever it might be. And again, that was okay, but it didn't really help the mental health side of things. Like it gave counselors a little something to eat, or gave them activities to do at night, but it didn't help with mental health. And then one year, actually in 2018, we trained all of our full-time staff and some of our summer staff in, it's called mental health first aid. And so it's bringing in professionals to talk about mental health and you know, ways to spot individuals who are struggling with mental health, or who have diagnosed mental health issues. And that was a really good thing. It gave us a really good baseline of teaching us things that we didn't know about mental health. It gave us statistics on the number of kids who struggle with depression or anxiety, or talking about how to identify suicide intentions or ideations or anything along those lines. So it was a really good baseline, but it wasn't really about preventing. It wasn't really about camp specifically. And it wasn't about how teaching individuals how they can also help themselves. It was, again, for us, a little bit more of a good baseline. And so we looked at those and we pulled and kept certain things from each of those areas, but we also realized this isn't going to solve everything that we do. And really, there's nothing that's going to solve everything, but it wasn't giving us the best chance of helping our campers and helping our staff. And so back in 2019, we started a partnership, and it's kind of the consultation model. And so fairly close to us here at Camp Tecumseh, there's a university, Purdue University. And so we went to their Department of Clinical Psychology and talked to one of their professors about what these challenges that we were seeing, and asked her if she had any advice or could give us any support. And so we created a model that we piloted for the first time in 2019, and it was very much staff focused. And you know, one of the reasons for that is that's the people we have here for the longest amount of time, and we don't have permission from parents to really do counseling with kids. And I'm not sure how it is in some of your countries. In the U.S., people like to, it's very legalistic. And so there are a lot of laws and lawsuits and things like that. So we had to be really careful about what we were doing and not doing. And so we said, we're going to focus this on our staff, on our 18 to 25-year-olds. And we kind of had a three-pronged approach to this. And I'm going to go into more detail on each of these, but there was the training part of it. How do we train our staff to be, you know, to know more about mental health, as well as to help others? There was the consultation of having real professionals give their advice and support and expertise to us. And then there's a research component of it, because in the end, we wanted to be able to show that this is a good program and that we can do it again, and that other places can do this as well. And again, for us, it provided some expertise. Like I said, YMCA people are really good at saying, let's figure this out ourselves and let's do it ourselves, partly because it's cheaper, right? We like to save money, and partly because we are good at a lot of things. You know, we work at the Y, we volunteer at the Y, and so we wear a lot of hats, if you will. And you know, one moment you're a maintenance person, and the next moment you're leading, you know, teaching basketball or whatever it might be. And so we're good at jumping around and trying that, but we realize this is an area that we need expertise. And that I've related it to, like, if a kid breaks their arm at camp, I'm not going to step in and say, I could be a doctor. I saw this on TV. I could probably help you with your arm. No, we're going to bring them to a doctor to do that. That's their training. That's what they do. And I think we need to approach mental health in the same way. I can listen to you, but I'm not the expert. And so that's why we brought in experts to help us with that. So I'll step through a little bit more of this consultation model, but again, it was after several years, and all of this was before COVID. And I'm again going to get into, okay, what did we change and tweak, and how did this look different in light of COVID? But I think it really relates, and honestly, it set us up pretty well for the COVID year. So again, the first part of this was the training part of the consultation model. And during that training, the big things we focused on were defining different mental health disorders or conditions, describing them so we know, okay, what does that look like, and what can I look out for, and then destigmatizing it. Again, only knowing our culture here in the United States, for a long time, mental health was something that you didn't talk about, right? And if somebody was going to see a therapist or a counselor about something, you didn't tell anybody about it because that's a personal thing. And I wonder how other people are going to think about me about that. And so one of our goals was to destigmatize that and say, it's all right to talk about your mental health. It's all right to see a professional to talk through it. And, let's normalize that a little bit, because it's a real thing. And again, I would look down on Olga if she told me that she broke her arm or that she got sick. Why would I look down at Olga if she tells me that she needs to see a therapist because she's struggling with anxiety? It's the same type of thing. We need to destigmatize that. So that was part of the training, of just talking about how prevalent it is, how many people struggle with this, because then you're sitting there thinking, all right, I'm not the only one here who struggles with that. There are other people out there who struggle with that. And that's an important thing, I think, that as leaders, we can model, right? And we can share with our staff or with our volunteers, you know what? Not everything's easy for me. And I struggle with that. And, I have somebody help me with that. I go and talk to somebody about that. Or, my wife and I go to a counselor just to talk about our relationship. And that's an important thing to be able to show as leaders, to show to the people who are following us. So that was one part of the training. The next was kind of identifying signs in others and how to respond, of talking through, okay, signs of depression. It might involve just being a little bit more quiet, or a lowered appetite, or all of these different things. Signs of an eating disorder, what that could look like, so that our counselors and our staff can spot something. And again, we're not going to become experts in it. And I kept telling my staff, like, it's not your job to diagnose every kid in your program. You can't do that. We're not experts, but you can know what to look for and what questions to ask, and figure out when something is an emergency and when something just it's time to keep an eye on it and see how that's going. So that was another part of the training that we did. And then there's that de-escalating behavior or thoughts. When you have a camper or you have a staff who's having a really difficult time, whether it's a difficult day or a difficult week, or whatever that length of time is, how do you talk to them? How do you ask questions and kind of get them to talk through it and to tell you what they're thinking, and to bring it down from a panic level to something that you can talk them down so that they can go in and eventually talk to a professional about that. And so what does that look like? And then the last thing that, again, I think was missing from a lot of the other pieces is self-care. How do you take care of yourself? How do you know when you need a break or what you need? Do you need food? Do you need sleep? Do you need time by yourself? Do you need time with somebody else? Do you need time to talk, or do you need time to just be quiet? Of figuring out, what does self-care for me look like, and how do I spot that, and how do I address it before I'm at a level I can't help anybody anymore, and I've gone too far. Again, I think at the Y we do a really good or bad job of, we do try to do a lot of things, and we just keep pushing ourselves, and we say yes to a lot of things. Of somebody asks for help, yep, I can help with that, and all of a sudden you're booked and you have no time for yourself. And at camp, for us, we have a lot of things going all the time and our schedule is packed. And so it's really easy not to take care of yourself. And so we talked about what are some methods of self-care and what does that look like? So that was the training piece. And we did that training with our full-time staff. We also did that training with all of our counselors. And so we took a couple of hours out of our training to talk through this. And we brought in these experts from Purdue who are getting ready to get their PhD in psychology to tell us about that. So it wasn't just Joel who Googled, how do you take care of yourself? And I printed it out and handed it to him. It was asking experts, how do you take care of yourself? And then there was the consultation part of it. So we had 4 PhD students who were our consultants for the summer, who they were supervised by their professor who holds her PhD in clinical psychology. They were our consultants. And so we had 3 parts of that. We had on-site, and so those folks, they would come to camp a couple of times a week, 2 or 3 times a week, and they could, counselors could sign up for times just to talk with them and say, hey, I had a rough week. Can I schedule time with you on Tuesday for 15 minutes that we can just talk and you can give me some advice, or we can debrief, or we can brainstorm what I should do with this situation or with that. One of the things that we saw that this was really helpful with is, for us, we have partners in the cabin. So there are 2 staff and they both live in the cabin together all summer, which can be really good. But if you've ever been in a relationship with anybody else, whether it's a boyfriend or girlfriend or husband or wife or partner, even really good relationships, you end up fighting about something, right? And so this on-site time was opportunities for one person to come, one of these counselors to come to a consultant and say, hey, I need to figure out a way to tell my partner that they're driving me crazy, and that they need to stop leaving all the trash on the floor, or they need to help me out more in the cabin or whatever. Can you help me figure out how to talk to that person? And so that was a really good opportunity. So these consultants were on site for 2 or 3 days every week for our counselors to do. And there was also just drop-in time, so they could schedule it, or if it was a last minute thing, they just said, hey, I need to talk to somebody. They had kind of office hours where they could go into it to talk to one of these consultants. We also had on call, because these folks didn't live on site. And of course, when they're on site, it's wonderful, but usually the most difficult things, of course, happen when they're not here. And so what do we do? And so we had somebody who was on call 24 hours a day that we could call them in an emergency. Now, not everybody had their phone number, because we don't want them calling for anything and everything, but all the full-time staff had their phone number. And we used that if we had a camper who started talking about suicide or talking about something really difficult that happened, and we could call these trained professionals and say, I've got a kid who said this, this, and this. What should I do next? Like, what's the next step? Is this something that you feel like I need to have them taken to a facility to get more advanced care, or is this something we can talk through? And so that was really helpful for us as well, to know we had somebody on call that we could get in touch with in case of emergency. And then kind of the third part of this is just realizing the importance of this being a third party. Because we always say, as YMCA people, we always are really good at saying, hey, if anything comes up, come and talk to me about it. I'm always happy to talk. But for all of these people, I'm their boss, right? And so that changes things a little bit. And so if you're struggling with something, or you're having a hard time, do you really want to come to your boss and say, I'm having a hard time, or I'm not getting along with my partner, or I don't know if I can do this? Most people don't really feel comfortable doing that, because they're afraid they're going to get fired, or they're going to get judged, or whatever it might be. And so having a third party who they're not involved in hiring them or anything like that, just somebody that they can talk with, was so important. And we heard that from our staff of how good that was, that they had somebody who wasn't their boss that they could talk to. And so that's kind of what the consultation model looked like for us. And then again, the last kind of prong of this was the research. And so we did surveys and kind of quizzes with staff before and after the trainings they went to see, okay, how did these trainings work? Did they teach you more about mental health and what to look for and that sort of thing? Or did they not? What are still the areas that you have questions about? And then in the middle of the summer, we got a group of these staff together, again, with the consultants, not with me as their boss, to say, what's working with this model? Where could you use more support? Where do you feel like you have too much support? What are some issues that we're not addressing that you'd like us to address? And so those consultants were able to compile that list and then come to us as the staff at Camp Tecumseh and say, hey, these are some areas that you guys really need to look at, and this is some things that we could change. And then with that, one of the things that made this program really great for these PhD students is that then they wrote up a scholarly paper and had it published in a psychology journal. And so they were able to look at it as good resume use for them as they go out into the world to become psychologists. So they have a paper that shows what this trainings look like, what did the consultation look like, what did the research look like, and it's now been published in a nationwide journal that they wrote. So again, it kind of gave some benefit to them and allowed us to go to donors and to other people and say, look, this is something that's really important and was used well. Please help us make this happen again. So that's what the 2019 kind of consultation model looks like. I'm going to pause again, both to take a drink as well as if there are any questions about what that looked like. And then I'm going to look at what changes we made in 2021 based on this. All right. So then this past summer, I talked to you about what changes we saw this past summer and how everything was more difficult and people were having more challenges, our campers and our staff. So what did we do about it? And some of these things we planned on, and some of these things partway through the summer, we're like, oh no, we need to do something different because this is not working. What do we do to change it? And so there's some of each of those. One of the things we did is, as I said before, our camp schedule is packed and it's go, go, go. And if you look at a schedule, they have activities planned from 7 a.m. until 9 o'clock p.m. and they're going the whole time. People were not used to doing that much physical activity after the last year. If you think of how much less activity you've done in the last year versus other years, we're staying in our houses more. We're sitting on the computer having Zoom calls instead of going down the hall to have a meeting, all of these things. And so we had to slow down the schedule a little bit. We told counselors, build in downtime so that you can just spend time walking. For our older kids, we started our day later. These 13 to 15-year-olds were not used to waking up at 7 o'clock. Like that was not going to happen. So we pushed it back an hour. So they had an extra hour of sleep every day than what they normally had. And they liked that a lot. Our counselors liked that a lot too, that extra hour of sleep. So we had to slow down the schedule. We can't overwhelm folks with what the day looks like. Going back to the consultation model, we increased the amount of time that we had those consultants on site. It was 2 days a week, and we moved it up to almost 5 days a week we had people here. And we picked out specific times for those consultants to be on site, knowing what are the highest stress times. For us, it's the lakefront. It's when kids and counselors go to the lake and the counselors have to guard that whole time and watch the water to make sure everybody's safe and all that. It's a high stress time. And so we had the consultants come in during that time and just after it. So if counselors were really stressed out after those high stress times, they had somebody that they could talk to right there, who was just there and could listen to them. We had to communicate a lot on the COVID policies. We met several times, and I think Megan's going to talk about this tomorrow more, but we met several times online with our staff and talked about this is what policies we're going to have in place. This is what we're going to require everybody to do. This is how we're going to change everything. So we communicated that. And then throughout the summer, we communicated when things happened or didn't happen. Again, like I mentioned before, anytime somebody would cough, all of a sudden our lights go off and say, oh no, they have COVID, what are we gonna do? And so we had to reassure them and be really open. That person doesn't have COVID. It was dusty, and so they were coughing or they were sneezing. It's okay. They're going to be all right, and you're going to be all right. Or if we're fortunate enough that we were able to do tests on site if we needed to, COVID tests, and so we were able to share with someone. Yep, somebody was tested and it came back negative. You're okay. And so we had to really communicate that well and realize that for some people that was a major concern. Also recognize that for some people it's even more of a concern because they're going home to a house where maybe they want to make sure they don't get their grandma sick at home and their grandma lives with them. And so we need to communicate even more with them. We created additional rest time for staff. Again, sleep does an amazing amount of good for people's mental health. And so our counselors, our staff get a certain amount of time off and they can leave camp, they can go do whatever they want. We added time but said, okay, for this hour, you can't leave camp. You have to go back to your cabin and sleep. That's all you can do for this hour. You don't have kids you have to watch, but you can't go out to a restaurant. You can't go hang out with your friends. You have to sleep. And 18 to 25-year-olds typically are not good at just stopping and sleeping. So when we said the only thing you can do is go lay on your bed, that helped them a lot. It gave them that extra energy. And several of them came back and said, thank you for making me do this, because if you would have just given me an extra hour, I would have gone and I wouldn't have gotten rest. So thank you for making me take that time to rest. We brought in additional nursing staff, so medical staff who could help, both for COVID reasons, but also just so that they could be another resource for counselors who are struggling with mental health. A lot of our nurses, work with people who also struggle with mental health in the hospitals, and so they could be another line of resource of, hey, what should I do in this situation, because they're experts in that. And so we brought in additional staff who could help with that. We also brought in a second inclusion specialist. I talked about what that position looks like earlier, of somebody just to help with, they end up helping a lot just with homesickness and behavior issues. As I said, it's not necessarily completely mental health related, but we had just an increase in behavior challenges for our kids because they hadn't been around other kids for a long time. They hadn't been in school. We had some kids who they had never been in a classroom when they arrived at camp, because everything had been online and virtual up to that point. And so we had to teach them how to be nice to other people. And so these inclusion specialists were able to come in and support our counselors and support these kids to help teach them what that looked like. And then we had partial summer staff. So again, usually our staff are here for 10 weeks. And that's a long time to be in one place away from home. And so we said, you know what? This year, if you only can work for 2 or 3 or 4 weeks, you can come in for part of the summer. We also brought in some people who they've kind of graduated from being on staff. Most of the time after folks graduate from college, it just doesn't work for them to come back to work for us for the summer. But some of them said, I can take a week of vacation and come and work for you. I can come in and help you out. And they were able to come in with a little bit more experience and also just bring a little bit of energy into that midweek thing. And so that's something I would encourage you, if you have programs that last for a longer period of time, bring in somebody new, fresh partway through, because they just radiate energy and they help everybody feel better about that. So that was another piece that we did with them. Again, there were a lot of other just minor adjustments that we made. A lot of those I think Megan's going to talk about tomorrow with kind of the logistics of running summer camp in COVID. But one of the things we've started to really think about is, okay, what of this is temporary and what's permanent, right? What did we have to do last year because it was the first year back from COVID? Or what were some of these mental health challenges that we saw last year, but they should be fine by next year? And I think what we're realizing is there's going to be more permanent than temporary, especially in mental health. because it's not like all of a sudden a switch is getting flipped and everybody's like, well, now I feel a whole lot better because, the numbers are looking better, or because there's a vaccine. Or no, there's still a lot of these challenges. It's not just going to go away because we've had a year to work with it. Again, for us, for a long time, we said, well, by this time next year, things will be a whole lot different or a whole lot better. I said that back in September of 2020. By September of 2021, things will be a whole lot better. Kind of, but some things are still really bad or really hard. And so a lot of these mental health challenges are not going to go away. And I think part of that is people are thankfully being more open about those challenges. As I said, it's not like mental health struggles are something that's new, right? 10 years ago, when we kept telling the counselors and staff to just tough it out and you'll be okay, it's not that nobody was depressed or had anxiety then. It's that nobody talked about it then. And it's that we kind of put, again, that stigma on it of, I can't tell you that I'm struggling with it, or you're just sad, right? That's kind of how but now thankfully we're more open to talk about what are those challenges, and let's bring in professionals to talk about it. And so that's why we're going to continue, I think, to see an increase of counselors and campers and everybody saying, I do have challenges in this, and I need somebody to help me with it. And I think then the coping skills, we've learned a lot of coping skills this past year of how to deal with things. And I think we're going to have to continue to add to that. And those are going to be something that sticks around for a long time of how do we get better at teaching self-care to people? How do we get better at talking them through it, not just so that they can run our programs, but so they're better people and that they're more healthy. As the YMCA, our goal shouldn't just be, let's get people here long enough and keep them healthy enough so they can do our program, and then when they leave, they're going to be fine and whatever. I don't care anymore. No, our goal for camp, and I think for all of the YMCA, is to say, how do I make sure that they have a great experience while they're with me, but even more so, we've taught them the skills at camp or at the YMCA, whatever program it is. So when they go home, they're going to be a healthier person, mentally as well as physically. So if we're teaching them coping skills here at camp, how does that translate to what they can do at home? And that's something we're really working with. We partnered with another organization that specializes in youth mental health and suicide prevention. And so we were able to send home information from that organization to some of these camper families to say, this is what you can do at home for your own mental health and to look out for your friends for their mental health. Because again, we fail as the YMCA if we only care about what they do while they're in our programs. We need to make sure that they are equipped to go out into their communities and into their families to have an increased mental health. And so again, so that's hopefully one of the temporary things is we'll have less COVID protocols in a year. I don't know, maybe we will, and maybe we'll have more. Nobody knows that at this point, but that's really about the only temporary thing I look at. I think so much of this is it's not going to go away. And we can't go back to our previous thoughts of tough it out, or you're going to be fine, or, it's part of the job. And so you need to deal with it. We need to acknowledge this is a real thing that people are struggling with. How can I help you be successful here at camp and when you go back home? So I try to keep it to about an hour here. So if there's time for questions or thoughts, or you could say, Joel, I think you're completely wrong on all of this. That's all right, because I'm not an expert in mental health. I can just tell you what we've done here. I think some of my big takeaways that I'll share with you is, number one, we can't do it just in the YMCA. Like, we're experts in a lot of things. At least I can speak for myself. I'm not an expert in this. And so I'm going to seek out people who are experts in this and work with other people. And I think by engaging other organizations like Purdue University for us, or whatever it might be close to you, it creates more buy-in to your program. And it makes it something where you as the Y are really part of the community and not just in your own little island or area, and that's all you do, but you include other people in that. And so that would be kind of one of the big things that I would encourage you to look at is how do you engage other people to help the kids and the staff who come into your program. So it's not just on you as your YMCA, but how do you include others?
While people are thinking about their questions, I take the opportunity to ask the one from my side. Which 3 rules or tips have you personally learned from the specialists on first aid on mental health?
Yeah,
and can share with us.
Sure. I think for me personally, the most important things I've gotten out of the kind of the mental health training is I like numbers a lot. I like statistics and figuring that out. And so seeing some of these statistics and realizing, if we have 700 kids here at a time, probably 70 to 100 of them have a diagnosed or diagnosable mental health challenge. And so if you look at that, when you say 10%, it's like, oh, okay, whatever. But if I look out my window and know that 100 of those kids are currently struggling with that, it makes it something that's really, really important to do. I think the other side is, looking, I don't have the exact percentage in front of me, but looking at the number of kids and young adults who have mental health challenges, but are not currently seeing a professional is just a huge staggering number of it. There's a lot of people who are just going through this in silence and not seeking out help. And so that for me is kind of that big wake-up call. I think the other, tool is on the self-care piece of things, of just realizing self-care looks very different for others. And we did an exercise to try to figure, okay, what does self-care look like for you individually? Because for me, self-care might be going out for dinner with a bunch of friends, because that's how I rejuvenate. And for Ariel, I just see on my screen, so I'm going to call you up. For Ariel, it might be she needs to just read a book and spend time by herself. And I can't expect Ariel to do the same things that I do. And so at your YMCA or at your camp, if you say, we're going to really get behind our staff and support them, and so we're going to do a pizza party for everybody, because that's going to help them. It might help some of them, but it's not going to help everybody. And is that just covering up the problem by giving them food or giving them time off or something like that? Or is that really addressing the mental health challenge? Did that answer your question, Olga?
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
У меня вопрос есть.
Yeah.
Вы сказали о том, что иногда персонал видит какие-то проблемы у детей, например, депрессию или тревожность, и вы предлагаете ребенку пообщаться с психологом, например, или другим специалистом. Скажите, пожалуйста, вы делаете это без согласия родителей, с согласием родителей, или вы, принимая ребенка в лагерь, предварительно берете согласие родителей на работу с специалистами?
I did not have my my translate on. Is somebody able to translate that for me? I can turn on the. All right, I've got my my interpretation button on now.
So what the question? Do you want to check the sound, Joe?
So I just turned on the interpreter. I turned it off while I was talking. Yeah. Yes, I can hear you.
Мне повторить вопрос? Мгм.
Yeah, so yeah, so we do have to get permission. The consultants who come on site never talk directly with the kids who are in the program. They only talk with the counselors who are adults, and they can give if through something that the kids share with us or something that we're seeing, we feel like a child might need to see a professional, then we'll communicate with the parents and have them and get their either permission, or usually what happens is we help to connect them with a therapist back home where they live. We have kids who come from all over, and through our resources, we're able to say, hey, we know of a good child therapist in Chicago, in your area. This is who we recommend. So yes, legally we can't bring them to a therapist or anything like that. And then I see a question in, did that answer your question?
Хорошо, спасибо большое. Мгм.
Excellent. And then I see a question here of how did the staff members accept the changes? Did they tell by themselves what changes they want? That was something, especially in 2019, we got a lot of feedback from counselors on that, and so we adjusted the program. And overall, they really liked that we did this. And one of the things that we heard is just by the fact that we brought in these consultants, they've realized we were taking it seriously. And that for them was really, really important to know that it wasn't just saying, hey, take care of yourself, good luck. We were taking it seriously by bringing in a consultant and bringing in this program. And then they did talk to us about the changes that they wanted to see. One of the biggies was they wanted more time that the consultants were available. So that's why in 2021, part of the reason why we increased the amount of time that they were available. They talked about, how much interaction they wanted between us as their bosses and the consultants and them of what does that look like. And then we've recently gotten some good feedback on what does the training look like and what do they wish they would have gotten more training in mental health before the kids arrive. And so we're starting to work that into next summer's plans for what do they need to learn during that time.
Daria Mashenko, I saw you raise the hand. Do you want to ask the question?
Да, я вибачаюсь, це було нечаянно. Я клацала кнопочку перевод.
No worries. So that was a mistake. Any other questions? Joel, then again, I will take the opportunity while
Если можно, я бы хотела спросить, какие темы звучали, вот вы говорите о том, что были тренинги перед началом сезона. Какие темы вы озвучивали в тренингах по ментальному здоровью? Если можно, перечислите хотя бы некоторые из них.
Yeah, absolutely. So some of the big ones that we discussed were depression, anxiety, eating disorders, suicidal ideation, which kind of overlaps a lot of those. Those were some of the biggies that we talked about, kind of given our clientele, the kids that we serve. We felt like those were some of the most important ones. We talked a little bit about, if you want to call it, some of the more advanced ones, whether it's schizophrenia or anything along those lines. But that we see less of in our campers. And so we kind of focus more on especially depression, anxiety, and eating disorders as kind of the biggies. Because we serve a lot of teenagers And those statistically are the ones that are most prevalent.
Да, я благодарю вас. Темы, которые связаны с уравновешиванием эмоционального состояния сотрудников, тоже вы их тоже рассматривали на подобных мероприятиях, да?
Yeah. So kind of the phrase that we use a lot is kind of that social emotional learning of kind of balancing different pieces of quite frankly just being around other people. And I'll share my background. My degree is in psychology. I'm not advanced. I'm not a therapist or a PhD or anything like that, but that's a little bit of my background. And so just figuring out like, how do you work with people? And how do you deal with different stressors or different opinions or whatever it might be? That's a big part of what we talk about with our staff and with our campers. On the first day, we meet with all of our campers and talk about what's it like to live in community with other people, and how do you have conflict that's not really difficult, hard conflict, but how do you have differences of opinions and disagreements? And so we do talk a lot about that. And then how do you manage your emotions? I'll share with you a personal thing is my son, I have a 6-year-old son who he has a lot of emotions all the time and a lot of feelings all the time. And so I get a lot of practice talking with him, and then I can relay it with my staff of like, how do you have emotions, which aren't a bad thing? How do you have emotions and then be able to express those in a positive way? And to be able to talk with them and name them. And that's one of the things I think we're really trying to teach our campers is how do you really describe the emotions that you're feeling and name them? Because if you can put a name to it, then you can process it. If all you're feeling is just your head going crazy with different things and you don't put a name to it, like I'm upset or I'm anxious or I'm frustrated, you can't really help to resolve it. And so that's something, on a personal level, I've gotten some people have said, Joel, your 6-year-old knows more words about his emotions than about any other kid I know. And that's something that we're trying to teach to our campers as well. How do you describe and name what you're feeling?
Спасибо.
Well, again, I just guess I want to reiterate what an honor it is to be invited to chat with you all. Hopefully there's at least one or two little things that were helpful to you through this. I really hope that you guys are able to go into this next year and make a difference in the lives of so many kids and young adults. Kind of the phrase that I used here at camp and so many other camps used this summer was, now more than ever. Kids need camp now more than they've ever needed it. Kids need the YMCA now more than they've ever needed it because of what they've gone through this year. And I will share, if you haven't started back up in youth programs, this is going to be a really difficult year. And I tell you that just to kind of let you brace yourself for it. For us, in just so many ways, it was one of the most difficult years we've ever had at camp, because of all of these things that are happening in people's lives and being apart for so long. But we heard over and over from people of, I needed this. I had campers and parents crying when they were checking into it at camp because they were so looking forward to being back at camp and they had so missed it and they knew this is what they needed. And so I guess just to prepare yourselves of, it's going to be really difficult, but it's going to be so important and so worth it in the end. So thank you for all that you guys do for the kids and young adults in your own countries and your own communities. And I will always extend the invitation. I just got a note from one of you who was actually came, and I do remember when you came and visited me last probably 2 years ago now. But if you're ever in the United States, it's a big place. Not quite as big as Russia, but it's a big place. But if you're ever in the area and want to come visit, you always have a place to come and stay and visit. I'd love to have you here.
Thank you so much. This is a really amazing and systematic approach that you just presented, and I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time. I'm sure that there are quite many learnings that the organizations can take. So to probably it will be difficult to introduce the same approach in the same format in other organizations, but definitely some elements like working with the professional psychologists, having inclusion specialists, this is definitely what can be done. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Oksana, Olga, do you want to have any comments for today or to present any information for tomorrow on administrative things? Thank you.